Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final presentation of the Right-of-Way Management 2020 webinar series. The Ontario Public Works Association Right-of-Way Management Committee is pleased to announce that going forward, it will be linking arms with the American Society of Civil Engineers, Utility Engineering and Survey Institute, known as UESI, their Ontario chapter, to co-host the annual Right-of-Way Management Conference. For those of you who are not familiar with UESI, we have invited Blaine Hunt to briefly speak to you on what they are and what they do and why they linked arms with the Right-of-Way Management Committee. Blaine?
Thank you, Steve. The Utility Engineering and Survey Institute, UESI, is a branch of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Aside from being responsible for the engineering standard that we use, which is the ASC 3802, UESI's vision is to be the worldwide leader in generating products, services, promoting excellence for utility infrastructure, engineering, and supporting survey as well. The Ontario chapter was founded in December 2018, and UESI Ontario was proud to be the first Canadian chapter within UESI. We've also welcomed other chapters within Alberta and BC to date, and we're looking at expanding in the East as well. UESI is proud to become a co-sponsor for the 2020 Right-of-Way Management Conference and beyond. We felt this was a great opportunity for us to join with the OPWA Management Committee. We had similar goals and objectives. We felt we could increase exposure to our members in Ontario and chapters across Canada and the US. And obviously we're going to strengthen an already established successful conference. So thanks to the OPWA and the Right-of-Way Management Committee, and most importantly, everyone, enjoy your webinar.
Thank you, Blaine. Prior to starting today's webinar, I'd just like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. First, all delegates will be muted throughout the webinar to eliminate any back noises or interruptions to our speaker today. Secondly, if you have a question, we ask you to use the QA tab to put forth your questions. Do not use the chat. We will be looking to the Q&A for any questions for our Q&A period at the end. And also, this webinar is eligible for OSET Continuing Professional Development Program as a partial 1 hour fulfillment of the full day informal course / self-directed study. A proof of registration and a short summary of what you learned need to be submitted to OSET for the webinar to qualify for your CPD. So today we have an excellent presentation. Today's webinar is titled The Future of Utility Coordination. So in July of 2020, the Ontario government passed the Building Transit Faster Act, the BTFA, to streamline the delivery of provincial transit projects. In support of this legislation, Metrolinx, together with Infrastructure Ontario, the Ministry of Ontario, and highly impacted utility companies set up a utility coordination program which oversaw the development of a new Utility Relocation Guideline and supporting processes to improve the location, treatment, and relocation of utility infrastructure. This session will introduce the program, its progress to date, and the exciting milestones yet to come. Our presenter today is Paul Collins. Paul has over 20 years of experience in utility infrastructure. His early career focused with municipal and development and site servicing work in the private sector with Latham Group, URS, Cole Sherman, and Delcan, with the latter company nominating him to coordinate utility work for the Toronto Transit Commission's Toronto York Spadina subway extension. And this is where I first met Paul when I was in my a previous role at the region. This was the start of Paul's focus on coordinating utilities in support of transit project delivery. For the next 11 years, Paul worked on various aspects of utility coordination and transportation implementation. He joined Metrolinx in 2016, ultimately becoming Director of Utilities for the Capital Projects Group, the position he holds today. Paul is instrumental in improving utility coordination specifically related to transit project delivery and is dedicated to connecting our communities. Paul, the virtual stage is yours.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Welcome everybody to the to this presentation. I hope that you find it somewhat interesting and enlightening. We've certainly been doing a lot of development of specific processes over the last little while to try and codify the relationship and the activities that we've been carrying out for the transit work that we've been doing within the Greater Toronto Area over the past decade. And some of you will have seen some of this before. Hopefully there will be some people in the audience who actually were participants in some of our workshops that led to this. So it shouldn't be too new, but it's a good time for us to show you where everything currently stands and where we hope to go from here. So starting off the screen share here. Okay, so as I've already pointed out, I'm the utilities director within the pre-construction services branch of Capital Projects Group within Metrolinx. Prior to that, I worked on the consultant side for the technical advisor group for the Eglinton Crosstown project for Metrolinx, and prior to that, I was on TYSSC doing the subway extension from what it was at the time known as Downsview Station up to the Vaughan Metropolitan Center at Highway 7 and Jane. This is what we're hoping to go through, but before we get going, Metrolinx likes to start off all of their meetings with a safety moment to just make sure that everybody it takes their own safety protocols seriously, and Metrolinx is trying very hard to incubate a strong safety focus for all of our projects. Obviously, as an operating railway, safety is a big concern for us on the operations side, but construction safety and just daily safety should be a focus for everybody as you go about your daily lives. So the item that I'd like to bring forward, and I know we've got people all across the country here. So people in the West have already been experiencing this for the past month. It's really only just coming to the East now. The transition from fall to winter and with the inclement weather that is coming, it's important for us to ensure that that whatever travel we do need to make, we are able to do it safely. So please pay attention to your weather conditions. Make sure that you've got all the safety equipment that you need to get through your travels, whether it be snow tires or winter tires on your vehicle. Some jurisdictions allow chains and studs, and emergency packs within your car that can help you to cope with an extended period in your vehicle if you do end up getting snow locked. So that's the moment that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention. Just please make sure that in your travels that you are properly equipped for the road conditions and the weather conditions at hand. All right, so here's the agenda that we are going to present today. Just the background of where we started and how we got to where we are. The new project for the development of the guideline and process map that we are developing to go along with the Building Transit Fast Track here in Ontario, and then the upcoming milestones to the project to close it off and make sure that everything is launched and we're able to carry out the utility work to support the capital projects that we do have, notably subways, but we also have GO expansion, railway expansion going on here in the GTA, and we have a number of other rapid transit projects that we're carrying out. And of course, that portfolio will be expanding as time goes by as well. So this is the program background for the projects that uh, basically instigated the need for the Building Transit Faster Act. When the government of Ontario, when the new government of Ontario came in, they wanted to add to our portfolio of capital projects that Metrolinx was carrying out at the time. As I mentioned before, the expansion of the GO rail network, as well as the rapid transit projects. And so they gave us 4 new projects that they wanted to see us carry out for, and all of these are subway type projects. One is the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension, which it's a subway in that it is going to be underground, but it is an extension of the existing or under construction Crosstown LRT that is expected to be operational in early 2022. As well as the 3 new lines that are listed here. The Yonge North Subway Extension, which starts at Finch Station on Yonge Street and goes up into Richmond Hill up to Highway 7. The Scarborough Subway Extension, which is a replacement for the Scarborough RT system that TTC runs from Kennedy Station over to McCowan and Shepherd, going past the Scarborough Town Centre. And the brand new Ontario line, which started life in plans, probably 60 years ago as the relief line for downtown Toronto, connecting up the eastern portion of downtown Toronto at Pape and Danforth to the downtown core, Queen and Yonge. And what this government decided was that it made more sense for this line to carry on further north to get up to Eglinton, because we were able to intercept a lot more people in the northeast portion of central Toronto, specifically the Leaside area. So we extended the line up to essentially Ontario Science Center, and then to carry it further west once we were downtown. And so the western terminus is approximately at Ontario Place, and hence the name Ontario Line. $28.5 billion going into this program, and 40 kilometers of new subway track. And as you can see, we're capturing not just existing ridership on the TTC, but we're actually generating 620,000 new daily riders with this overall expansion. And so the idea is just simply to make it easier for people within the GTA to transit around without having to contend with congestion within the roadways. The challenges that our constructors have faced and our designers sort of break into these 6 buckets here. And so this is what we were trying to address when we developed the BTFA, starting with the upper left corner. The environmental assessment process in Ontario does tend to lock you into specific solutions once you've completed it. And we wanted to provide a little more flexibility to deliver the outcomes that we were actually trying to achieve with the programs that we were developing, by providing flexibility to the design builders to come up with more innovation. There are also interactions that our corridors have with other third parties who are doing development. And so we needed to have better control of the interface between third-party developers adjacent to our corridor and ourselves. And we've also run into delays in getting the necessary permits to carry out the work within these road rights of way. Keeping in mind that these projects are going on in roads that are not owned by the province, they're owned by municipalities. And so the municipal permits are actually fairly critical to being able to construct these projects, particularly knowing that at the end of the day, when the project is done, the municipality assumes responsibility for the right of way again. Over on the right side of this slide, you can see a couple of property related issues. One is the need for us to, during the investigations, to carry out some subsurface investigation and some soil sampling And so we need permissions to enter that can be sometimes pretty tricky to actually gain. Um, and also our own expropriation process within the province of Ontario can sometimes lead to long timelines for us to assemble land that we require for these projects if we find that the current landowner is not an excited and willing partner to us. So we wanted to ensure that where we need to exercise the right to assemble these lands directly, that we have a clear and consistent and reasonably quick path. Hold on a second. And then the item that is my specialty, sorry, is the utilities relocation portion. And some of the companies that have been doing work with us had expressed concern that they were unable to get utility relocations carried out to a schedule that worked with their overall project schedule. And so the idea was that if we could properly document and streamline the process, we'd be able to ensure that the utility company's infrastructure is relocated in a timely fashion, but also respecting the utilities' needs to continue to serve their customers and keep their network whole while the work is going on. So these are the supporting bits of legislation that have been enacted to help us carry out this relocation work that we need to do, starting off with the Getting Ontario Moving Act, which was when the 4 subway lines were announced. But the Building Transit Faster Act is an act that is aimed at addressing those 6 buckets that I just discussed on the previous slide. So here are the provisions that are largely covered within that. We've got corridor development permits, which are the way that we are able to control the access to the corridor so that third-party developers and our constructors are forced to coordinate, and that way they don't trip over each other and cause delays to each other's projects. Our ability to enter land assembly, municipal service and right-of-way access, which is the way that we manage the permits, as well as the control of the right-of-way from a road cut, road occupancy, traffic management perspective, and then of course utility company coordination. So this is what we were aiming to do with the BTFA. We were trying to create a framework for enhanced coordination, and so that the items that we put into the BTFA are basically a call for us to create an enhanced process for coordinating the work with utilities and provide incentives for them to carry out the work in a timely manner. It gives us the opportunity to require utility company participation in our planning, development, and construction process. But it's all under direct negotiation with the utility companies. Everything's done in good faith. There's nothing that tells the utility companies that we are going to step in and just dictate to them how they run their business and how they carry out their utility relocations. We also made sure that it was clear to these utility companies that we are taking financial responsibility for this work. It is open for negotiation if the utility company recognizes that that there are benefits that accrue to them through this work. Then we invite them to participate financially in the work, but we also recognize that this is being driven by us and our projects, and so it is our responsibility to ensure that that the work is carried out in a manner that keeps them whole. And given that sometimes we will run into places where we need the utility work to be carried out and the utility company may object to it, that dispute does have to be managed in some way. And so we've created a mechanism to allow for these disputes to be managed. What have we done so far? Well, we started off by creating a guideline document that has attempted to describe the way that we carry out the utility coordination work. And it basically is trying to capture the work that we've been doing up until the BTFA was created, so that everything would look familiar to the utility companies who have been working very diligently with us over our other portfolio of projects. But this guideline folds into it the notification process that is required through the BTFA, as well as uh, nodding towards the dispute resolution process as well. Now, one of the things when people look at this is they'll recognize that it's very similar to some work that the Transportation Association of Canada has been carrying out. Steve Murphy's been very involved in that as well. And so, of course, he recognized it right away when we presented it to the York region. But this is a guideline that relies heavily on industry experience, and so of course there are going to be commonalities across the various bodies that are looking at how to implement best practices and share them across various jurisdictions. We also drafted process maps that again are similar to what the P3 uh, project delivery version of Transportation Association of Canada's guideline created. We ran this through some workshops with specific utility companies and municipalities to make sure that they recognized the way that it worked. They accepted the way that it worked. They provided their own feedback on how things could be improved, and we did our best to incorporate those challenges and suggestions where we could. Um, Again, it's trying to streamline the different segments of a project, from the planning and RFP development to the procurement and implementation phases. And then once everything's complete, then you're into the operation and maintenance phase of a project. And we still needed to have a process in place to deal with any utility interactions that might occur after we are done our construction. Um, we also identified the key stakeholders involved in the new process and made sure that we understood how these changes would impact them. In particular, the municipalities, because they are heavily engaged in all of the coordination across all of the utility companies throughout their entire project, they needed to be heavily and frequently consulted as the work is going on. So we made sure that within the guideline itself that was documented. And then we started to, once we got to the point where we had developed the guideline, we started to communicate this out. And it's basically broken down into these 6 buckets here: the process that I've already mentioned, the communication points that are specifically called out within the guideline and map, the specific notifications and the format that they're going to come in, which I should probably at this point reference the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario's own PSWHA, Public Safety Works and Highways Act. They have a process where they issue letters throughout the development of a project, and we have actually relied on those letters as a guide for how we could be communicating to utility companies as well. So we have again tried to duplicate something that was already happening in the market, so that everything is consistent and it is recognizable to any utility company who is doing business within the jurisdiction of Ontario. Um, the other parts that we're building up are our own ability to track and assemble the data that is associated with these utility installations. So we've been developing new enhanced systems for data sharing and compilation. We're working to try and get it all into a GIS system that is going to be accessible to not just to us and our projects, but also to the wider world who need to manage these things. So we're very encouraged that this will be a useful tool, not just for us, but also for the municipalities we work in. And we've also tried to ensure that the roles and responsibilities within these projects are well understood, so nobody loses track of whether it is their responsibility to carry out any particular coordination, support, protection, or relocation work that has to be done. And as I mentioned before, we are also working to develop the dispute resolution process that is granted to us through the BTFA. So this is talking about the data that we are now generating and trying to implement into a shareable GIS platform. We're setting up a new Office of Utility Coordination that is going to not only be able to track the individual installations and the work that's being done, it's also going to be able to track the efficiency with which we're able to carry out the work, how well utility companies are able to respond to our requests, and how quickly we're able to get the work, and whether it actually it conforms to the negotiated schedules and costs that that the work was supposed to take. So what are the next milestones? Well, obviously, getting back to this Office of Utility Coordination, we are working on developing the appropriate tools to actually assemble this and then be able to share it out. So we're already proceeding with the data acquisition and information management components, but we're going to be generating proper key performance indicators to feed into our own enterprise reporting, and also be able to trace out the individual works as they are from the point that they're identified to the point that they're completed. And then we're hoping to take the work that we've done and the data that we've generated as the work has been done, and run that through some proper analytics to ensure that we are improving the process and the interactions with our utility companies as we go ahead. What are the final steps? Well, once we officially kick off the office, we're then going to be generating our first set of reports to demonstrate through our KPI selection just how well this is going, and we're going to be happy to report on this to our utility partners and municipal partners as well, to show how well things are working with the people that we are working with, and where there are opportunities for us to do even better. And then we'll host some sessions with these utility companies to make sure that everything is well understood and how everything is working and where there are opportunities to improve it. And that's basically it for this presentation. So are there any questions at this time that people wanted to pose?
Thank you, Paul. We have received a couple. So first one is, how will the BTFA impact Public Service Works on Highways Act? The cost share between proponent and utility company, will it still be as per the Public Service Works and Highways Act?
So we have, yes, we have different different cost sharing regimes spelled out between PSWHA and BTFA. BTFA takes on 100% of the responsibility for the works for these projects when they're being done as a priority project under the BTFA. We are not intending to adjust the cost sharing in any way for the PSWHA. So those provisions of sharing of the capital and the labor costs remain in effect with the PSWHA. But it's an interesting question, because one of the things that we did not speak to in this presentation is there's been a recent introduction of a bill 222, which is going to slightly modify both the BTFA and PSWHA, among other things. So it's going to provide for the ability for us to request that the ministry nominate other projects as priority projects to fit under the BTFA. So in theory, the LRT projects that we're carrying out, or the bus rapid transit projects that will be either finishing off now or starting up in the near future, they could be named priority projects as well. PSWHA, I think, is only being modified in that they will then have access to the same dispute mechanism or dispute resolution mechanism that was coded into the BTFA.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Just before I ask the next question, we're going to launch a poll. And as we continue the QA, if we're asking our delegates if you could respond to that poll or that survey. Thank you. Next question we have, can you please confirm if the BTFA also included the utility investigation process SUE as the TAC UCUR 2016 design bid build and the soon to be released TAC P3 guidelines as per TAC guidelines?
That's a question I would have to I would have to delve into a little more specifically, because I'm not certain exactly how the SUE work is codified within the TAC P3 process. I know that we certainly do include the SUE investigation as a specific task and output for our process. So probably, but I would, with a submitted question on this, I could get back to you and provide a written answer later.
Okay, Paul, here's the next one. It says, will the session be held just for utility owners and municipalities? Will there be sessions to lay this out for consultants as well?
So this is part of what we're doing right now. Is we are doing these sessions with different public bodies. We are definitely going to be having a utility company specific walkthrough of this again once we've got it to the point where it is finalized. We're just crossing T's and dotting I's right now on the guideline to get it approved by the Ministry of Transportation. But after that, I would imagine we would be hosting some sessions that would be available to constructors and developers and consulting engineering firms.
Okay, here's another one. Paul, will the dashboard be available to the public?
We're going to make something available to the public, and it's just a matter of how much data we're prepared to share. But we're working through exactly what we want to provide. Some of it, of course, becomes part of the general Metrolinx reporting function that we've got. Some would be available strictly through FOI, and some we will publish directly.
Okay. Okay, this next one, I'm not quite sure what it's saying. It says Finch LRT is not taken care of by Metrolinx. I believe it is a Metrolinx project.
Yeah, it is. Now, it is not listed as a priority project at this time, and so BTFA does not directly impact it. But as I mentioned, Bill 222 provides us the opportunity to name other projects as priority projects. And so if it were to prove advantageous for us to apply the BTFA to the Finch project, we'll take that under advisement. That's something that I'm sure we'll be discussing with our project company on that project.
Okay, great. Here's one. It says excellent presentation. Thank you, guys and gals. What are the types of incentives you are using for timely relocations?
Well, first and foremost, it's that we're paying for everything. So the utility company gets to they get a little bit of reputational bump because they'll end up being spoken of as someone who was a collaborative partner in developing the project. They're going to end up with brand new asset in the location where the work is carrying out. It's an opportunity for them to actually carry out their own enhancements or betterments in the area and only have to pay for the uptick in cost. So there's an opportunity there for them to actually improve their system. Well, I mean, I guess those are the big ones. But of course, with these projects, there's going to be opportunities for them to develop new customers as their work is being carried out as well. If it's going to be an actively conditioned underground system, and I know TTC for the most part, their subway systems are passively conditioned, so they just rely on piston effect for air exchange, for example, and they don't do air conditioning or heating. But I'm not sure that the Ontario line is not going to be air conditioned, which means that not only will we require power for traction power, but we'll also require it for the operations of the station. So if we're heating it, then maybe Enbridge is a player in that, or maybe we're doing electric heat. I don't know. So it's an opportunity for us to become a client to these utility companies as well.
Great, thanks, Paul. Here's one about KPIs is when will the KPIs be published?
Well, first they have to be established, and we are working through exactly what we're planning on tracking and measuring. But that's something that we're within weeks of having nailed down. I would think that we'll be coming to a decision in the next couple of months on how we're going to share that information out, and then we'll find an appropriate venue for it. There will be some sort of web page will be set up, no doubt. But I would imagine it'll be in calendar Q1 or Q2 of 2021 that you'll see the first range of data being shared out.
Great, excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing those too. Utility relocation costs and time. Is it much less for an LRT compared to a subway, or pretty well the same?
They're actually quite different in the way that they interact, primarily because when you're dealing with the subway program, you're talking about large excavations that are very localized, and with the tunnel work going on underneath everything that already exists. So in some ways, the LRT work can be a little less disruptive because you don't necessarily have to excavate deeply, but in some cases, because you've got long linear installations within the middle of the road, if you find yourself in a place where you have to relocate something that's parallel to the system, it can be quite extensive. And so, for an example, on the Finch LRT project, before we could even get going, we had to contend with an extra high pressure vital gas main that meandered around the Finch Finch right of way, and we ended up spending about $100 million just to relocate portions of that pipe so that it was not going to be underneath our centrally aligned track throughout the right of way. And it was a lot of heavy lifting that Enbridge had to carry out to get that pipe shifted so that we could put our LRT in place. But they really put their nose to the grindstone and got it done for us. So.
Excellent. Okay, we still got a few more questions here. How is the work regarding overall master agreements with utility owners coming along? How does that slot into what was presented here?
So I wouldn't say that there's such a thing as a master agreement per se, but what we have is we have a number of we have a suite of agreements that we go through with different utility companies. So the first one that would be important would be something along the lines of a market participation and design development agreement. So it might be a staffing agreement, for example, like we have with Toronto Hydro. There might be just a participation agreement for the sharing of data and the participation in the work on developing the reference concept design, which we oftentimes will have with someone like Rogers or Bell, so that they have staff that are dedicated to that. Then there's the actual relocation work, which when we're doing relocations in advance of the project, we call those preparatory activities. And so we'll have a preparatory activities agreement, or in certain utility companies' cases, they like to have a different name. So for example, Hydro One likes to call them the Transmission Asset Modification Agreement, or TAMA, or Distribution Asset, so DAMA or TAMA. But they're the same thing from our perspective as the preparatory activities agreement. And then we've got the in-market participation and relocation services agreements, where the utility companies join us during the actual bid process to talk to the potential project codes. Plus, they provide us with a form of agreement that they would be willing to enter into directly between themselves and a project co once a project co has actually been selected. So we are negotiating those with all the utility companies right now on the subway project. They're largely in the same form that we've already executed with them, either on previous rapid transit projects or on the Go expansion project that's going on. So there's not a lot of reinventing the wheel going on here. It's really just making sure that the agreements are consistent with the projects that they're trying to address.
Okay, here's one about road occupancy permits. It says, will Metrolinx apply and pay for municipal road occupancy permit if they have planned work on the city and / town roads?
We make our project co to be fully responsible for acquiring all relevant permits. So for our own construction, our own assets, yes, absolutely, Metrolinx, well, or rather the PICO will be paying for it. For the utility company work, that's just part of the costs that are associated with the utility work. And so although the utility company is responsible for getting their permits, they just end up billing it to us. So in a roundabout way, the answer is yes.
Okay. Can you give some examples of time-saving activities that have occurred as a result of this legislation?
We're in early days yet, so I don't really have an example of how things are in a time-saving manner just yet. But what we are finding is that the early engagement means that we're getting a much better coordination with the utility companies, and it's helping it to drive our decision-making on how to construct. An example would be the early engagement we've had with Enwave in the downtown core. The original plan that would have been carried out by the TTC when it was the relief program was going to trigger a wide-scale relocation by Enwave. And when they got looking at the total implications, they were going to end up having to spend somewhere in the range of $300 million to do a scenic route relocation to get out of Queen Street and keep their clients whole. So by having them well engaged over the past 8 to 10 months, we've been able to discover that it's worth our while to reconsider how we want to construct through the Queen Street corridor between Yonge and Avenue, or University Avenue. And so we've scaled back the connectivity between City Hall and the Queen and Yonge station. We've shifted the station further east so that it straddles Yonge Street instead of entirely being on the west. We are controlling our tunneling efforts through Queen Street to avoid having to do much more than just some structural support or control of their existing tunnels. So that's, I don't know if that you would classify that as a time saving, but it's probably going to end up saving us a large portion of that $300 million that might have been required if we had just proceeded with the plan as we received it.
Okay. For the next question, I'd just like to remind anyone who hasn't responded to the poll, if you could please do so. This information is very helpful for us planning future presentations and webinars. Thanks. Thank you. Next question, Paul. How does utility company planned enhancements get addressed under this new process?
So I guess, so if we're talking about the stuff that is already being impacted by the work that we're carrying out, we invite the utility company to include their enhancements and betterments in the area as part of the overall project. But we do require that they pay for the actual enhancement, because our intent is to simply do like for like replacement to current codes. And like for like, from our perspective, is not about replacing one pipe with another pipe. It's about replacing the function of that pipe with something else that provides the same function. It might end up that you end up consolidating a system so that it's not two distinct pipes. For example, we did this on for Toronto Water on Eglinton, where there were opportunities for us to take two water mains and combine it and provide one larger water main to provide all the service in the area that they required. Toronto Hydro, as an example, for the Go expansion work, where we need them to vacate the crossings that are going overhead through our corridor, because we're putting in electrification overhead control systems. They looked at their overall network and they decided that rather than just bury every crossing that we came across, they would prefer to actually beef up some crossings and then just eliminate others. So to us, that's like for like, because it provides the same functionality to the utility network that they had previously. If they were to choose, for example, at a crossing to future proof by putting in additional conduits for a future circuit, that would be the cost that they would have to carry. But since we're already installing an underground conduit carrier, the difference between one size of liner and the next size up, and the additional cost of the actual boring, is really all that they would have to pay in order to get that enhancement.
Okay. Bill 222, does that include highway priority projects?
You know, I'm not actually entirely certain of what else is going to be impacted by it. The two parts that I've paid attention to are as I mentioned, the ability for us to dictate or rather have the ministry dictate what are going to be priority projects. I don't believe that any new highways would go under Building Transit Faster Act. I think they would remain the same as other ministry projects, and that's why the dispute mechanism is being folded into PSWHA.
Okay, here's one. It's when there is a landowner who has land that is in conflict and don't want to cooperate with the project, like a subway extension, what options are available to deal with that owner?
Well, we always try and negotiate in good faith with a landowner, because we think that it's fair to them to give them the proper opportunity to transition out of a property once it's identified as being required for the project. But at the end of the day, this is about expanding our transit network, and if we need to be able to accommodate a lot more people, we're probably going to end up needing the land, unless we can find an alternative version that in the same location that serves the same purpose. So if you've got a landowner who does not want to divest themselves of the land, and there really isn't any other option, and I'm thinking, for example, where we're building adjacent to a railway corridor, there's no opportunity for us to choose another alignment. It's already there. So the land is the land that we need. All that we can do is we can either negotiate in good faith and provide a business justification for choosing to pay anything over and above what fair market value would be, and it basically there has to be a solid justification for us to even entertain something like that. We can't just go around and throw money at it. But if we aren't able to negotiate a proper fair deal for the province and for the landowner, then we go to expropriation, and that means that we have to go through a hearing of necessity to prove that that we actually need that land. Well, what's happening with the BTFA is that once we've identified the land as being required for the project, the need for hearing of necessity is scoped somewhat. And I'm not the person to speak to on this. I know that our property acquisition people know a lot more about it, but my understanding is that it foreshortens that, so that we're not waiting forever. Once we know that there's an objection, then the minister has to make a decision one way or the other anyway. So I believe that the process has been sped up on that. Like I said, I'm not really the expert on that.
Okay. The next question we have is, I understand Metrolinx is doing a system upgrade in Kitchener within the next few years. Will this be a priority project?
Good question. From a utility perspective, we don't really see a lot of value in changing the utility interactions from the current regime to BTFA because it's different from the road rights of way where the BTFA was really designed for to give us priority. Where we're doing rail expansion work, we already own the land. We've got crossing agreements with utility companies. We've got the rights already inherent in the BTFA for us to have utility companies relocate as required. So not really sure that BTFA is going to apply to that work, but it may for the other provisions, the permitting, the corridor control, that sort of thing. From a utility perspective, it's kind of a wash.
Okay. Clarification on the agreement question. Was referring to master crossing agreements in lieu of individual crossing agreements for each asset.
Sorry, can you reread that, please, Steve?
Yeah, this is more of a clarification on his question about the agreements.
Oh, the master agreements. They were asking about master crossing agreements?
Yeah,
okay.
Was referring to master crossing agreements.
Okay, so that's very much it. That's a rail issue, and it's something that we are negotiating with all the utility companies whose asset we are having to touch because of the GO electrification work that we're doing. So where there is, it's not just electrification, it's all of the GO expansion work. So where we are doing relocations because we need to do so in order to allow us to expand our tracks, whether we go from one track to two tracks, for example, on the Barrie corridor, or where we need to do a grade separation to put road under or over the rail, or something like that. If we're doing utility relocations, then we're doing preparatory activities with the utility companies. We're also creating a master crossing agreement that is similar to the individual crossing agreements we have now, but the idea is to try and get everything under the same terms and conditions so that way in the future, when something has to be adjusted or a utility company wants to introduce a new crossing or something like that, they're all under the same terms and conditions for rights of removal, cost sharing, for any future relocation, protection of the rights of the utility company on the GO lands, and various things like that. Also payment of the license fees. So all of those things are being done for the utility companies whose asset we are already testing, are changing. If there are utility companies that want a master crossing agreement in lieu of the existing agreements that they have, that's something that we will entertain, but recognizing that it's not a priority for us to pursue so long as we've got our focus on the ones that we're actually having to work with directly as we're going ahead. And the other part to that might be of interest to some people is that there are opportunities for legacy crossings to be folded into that master crossing agreement once it's negotiated. But that's something that has to make sense to both Metrolinx and the utility company for us to be willing to pursue it. So with Hydro One, where we're touching everything, it makes sense for us to roll in the few that we're not into the master crossing agreement, and then all of their crossings will be documented in one place. But there are some people who we don't really have a lot of assets with, and we're not doing a master crossing agreement. It doesn't, the amount of effort that you expend into creating that MCA doesn't make a lot of sense for what you ultimately get. But we're open to the idea.
Okay. Here's one. I'm not sure it's really going to be project by project, but I'll ask, can you share the approximate time and cost of utility relocations for a section?
Sorry, so time and cost for utility relocations for what?
Per kilometer.
Oh, do we have like a bulk number that we use for planning, you mean?
Yeah, I'd assume that's the question.
So we don't really, I don't think that we've ever come up with a bulk number because we don't approach projects that way. Even in the early planning stages, we when we're carrying out the environmental assessments, we found it to be much more effective for us to at the very least, do a cursory review of the available data, because conditions vary wildly depending on what type of municipality you're dealing with in terms of age and vintage of the utility assets. It would be wildly different for us to be looking at downtown Richmond Hill, for example, as compared to downtown Toronto. The age, the need for reinforcement, the density of stuff in downtown Toronto, you couldn't estimate that on a per kilometer basis. Using that sort of estimate means that you're likely to gloss over things like the N wave issue that I flagged before.
Mhm. Okay, just a few more questions, Paul.
Okay.
Once these projects are completed, will these projects devolve to other parties like TTC or be retained by Metrolinx?
Well, there's a lot of negotiation going on between us and the City of Toronto on things exactly like that. So obviously with subway extensions, we're going to be handing everything over in some format to the TTC. At the very least, they're the ones that'll be operating their trains on there. I don't know exactly what the ultimate disposition will be, but I can imagine that it would be in some format. There would be a handover. But that being said, I think on the Eglinton Crosstown, I think that Metrolinx retains ownership through the life of the project, which includes the operations and maintenance phase. But TTC is going to be the operator of the Eglinton Crosstown. So I don't know what happens at the end of 30 years. I think we're still negotiating that, and we've been working on this project for 8 years now. The Ontario line, it's still in negotiation as to even who's going to be the operator. Everything, we're technology agnostic on that one right now. We're chasing different options, whether it's going to be heavy rail or if it's going to be intermediate capacity. It comes down to what do we actually need to, how many people do we need to move and how frequently and how fast. At the end of the day, what we're trying to provide here is mobility for the people. We're not wedded to any particular technological answer. And then you look at the LRTs, like on here, Ontario, I believe that we retain ownership for it, and we just are integrating with the rest of the Mississauga system. And that was a discussion point on Hamilton as well. We didn't know exactly where we were going to land on ownership and operations between ourselves and Hamilton Street Rail. So all these things are open questions, and they can be touchy negotiations at times. But I'm sure by the time we get things within shouting distance of being in operation, we'll have it all nailed down.
Okay, how much time and money do you estimate this initiative will save?
The big savings is going to be in the risk pricing with PICO, and so we're not going to be able to fully quantify it, but that's part of why we're setting up the OUC, is to try and track exactly that. So by advancing the utility work, our original approach on Eglinton Crosstown, for example, we were hoping to transfer as much as possible of the utility work into the hands of PICO, because we believed that it might drive some innovation in how they would choose to construct, and they might choose to avoid utility work rather than carrying it out. Our experience has shown that PICOs are not really set up to make money off of dealing with utility work, whether it's by carrying it out themselves or by avoiding it. They'd much rather just have the utility infrastructure not be something that they have to consider. And so on the subway projects, what we're doing is we're identifying as much as possible to carry it up front and not have it in PICO's scope. So where we expect to save money is that we're not going to see the markups on PICO carrying out the work, and we're also going to see a foreshortening of their overall schedule, so they won't be carrying nearly as much risk or schedule cost in that. So the savings are not necessarily going to show up in the utility work per se, but they'll show up in the overall project.
Okay, will Metrolinx fund any additional monitoring requirements to the utility owner once construction is finished and they take back control of the asset? Is this Progeco's responsibility if they are maintaining?
That seems like an interesting question that I'd prefer to answer in detail through a submitted question and answer. But certainly, for example, with oil pipelines, I know on other projects we have put it into PECO's hands to be responsible for it, but we do also code in the standards and special requirements of the utility company. So we're very open to it if it is a reasonable requirement of the utility company to provide that sort of monitoring and inspection to make sure that their assets are not damaged post-construction.
Okay, I'm going to ask this one. I'm not sure it's really should be directed at you, but is it possible to obtain updated utility as-built drawings available online? I think that may be for a utility company, but.
Right. Well, so I mean, utility as-built drawings are always going to be tough to share out because we're not really the owners of that data. But I think that there's going to be some sort of utility data that will become available through the OUC and particularly the GIS application because we do want to be able to try and keep track of it centrally. We're hoping that this will be something that we can work with Ontario One Call to develop some sort of repository of information. If it's expandable across the entire province, that would be awesome. But we're kind of looking at it as an opportunity to revisit the purpose of City of Toronto's efforts to create a CU map, and prior to that, their oh shoot, what's the DMOG data that they created. So we're looking at that and thinking that was a project that was limited to the old City of Toronto. It would be great if it could be updated, corrected, and expanded. And so what we're doing is trying to create something that would be useful to municipalities beyond just the transit work.
And Paul, that's the last of the questions. Thank you very much. There was lots of engagement there. It was great to see. So I'd like to thank you, Paul, for your time and effort speaking to our audience today and getting that message out to the industry. And I would like to thank all delegates who joined us today and throughout the 2020 webinar series. It was extremely successful, far beyond what we anticipated in numbers attending. And we thank you. And we will be moving forward and planning hopefully a face-to-face conference next year, but that's to be determined. If not, it might be a combination of face-to-face and virtual. So lots of stuff up in the air and new ways to do things to figure out for next year. So you can always visit our webpage, rightawaymanagement.ca, for any updates. Any presentations that we have received approval from the presenter to put on our webpage will be made available. And any question and answers that we receive back written form from the presenters will be also made available on the website as well. So on that, once again, thank you and stay safe and healthy.
Thanks for inviting me and thanks for paying attention, folks.